This is Roots en Route.
My name is Rueben Thompson, and I am an environmentalist here on St. Maarten. Been back home on St. Maarten for the better part of the past 20 years, and I work with the environmental organizations on St. Maarten, with the St. Maarten Pride Foundation, with Environmental Protection in the Caribbean, with the Emilia Wilson Estate Foundation. And the Emilia Wilson Estate Foundation is actually what brings us here today. This afternoon, we find ourselves on the Emilia Wilson Estate, which is an iconic piece of property here on St. Maarten. It is made up of two former plantations, the Golden Rock and the Industry Plantation, which many of our ancestors worked on in the colonial period, in the slavery period. It is a piece of property that means a lot to the people of St. Maarten. I'm going to walk around a little bit, show you a little bit of it, but also speak about it a little bit. Emilia Wilson was a gentleman who purchased the property in, I believe, the 1950s and lived here for his entire life. And during that period, really tried to keep the property in its original intact size and in its original form. He even, up until his elder years, he cooked in the old way on a tree stone, and he had a very simple traditional life. For decades, generations, people toiled in this property as slaves. You will see a lot of the structures that were built by them in that period. It was a plantation from the mid-1600s up until the 1870s. And the historical records show that in order to keep this plantation operational, you would have to think about the crops that were here, sugarcane, cotton, some indigo, and I'm sure that there were other crops as well. In order to maintain the operationality of this plantation or these plantations, an average of 63 slaves were needed on the plantation, and therefore, through the generations, that was maintained, that 63 slaves around that were on the plantation to keep it going. So many of our ancestors obviously toiled on this plantation. You will find various slave walls that were built on the property in that same period to separate, let's say, an agricultural plot from where you would keep your cattle. Some of our most intact slave walls, historical rock walls, are found on this property. But there's a very close link between culture and nature. So these walls are man-made, so they're cultural components. But nature sorts of takes over man-made structures. And you will find on many of these rock walls, particularly the higher ones, you'll find that there's vegetation growing that you see nowhere else. So you will see bromeliads, you will see orchids that are growing on these rocks and other vegetation that you do not find in the lower lying areas. What we have done as environmental organizations is we have carried out research to see how the ecological value is. And part of that research is that we have carried out an inventory of all of the flora on this property. So there's been a substantial inventory carried out by a botanist by the name of Frank Axelrod, who is from the University of Puerto Rico in Rio Piedras. And he has documented vegetation on St. Maarten that has never been documented before. So the studies that were done previously were not, completely comprehensive. So we find vegetation here on the hillsides that you're looking at that has not been documented for St. Maarten before, has in some cases not been documented elsewhere, and is very unique to our island.
jarenlang langs lange flats.
St. Maarten is the only island within the Dutch Caribbean that does not have a land-based protected area, that does not have a wetland protected area. The environmental organizations and the cultural historical organizations on St. Maarten have for years advocated to have an area protected. And this property has been on that list for all of that period. So there has been, in various tranches, there have been a lot of efforts to try to get this property established as our first land-based protected area. To that end, we managed to have government establish it as a national monument in its entirety. So not just the structures that you'll see, but the entire property was designated to be a national monument in about 2008, 2009. Fast forward in about 5 years, perhaps 2013, 2014, somewhere around there, we managed to get government to purchase it. And we thought that that would lead then to it being protected. Unfortunately, that did not happen. And part of it was given away in long lease to an amusement park, which you'll see behind us. But let's speak a little bit about why it is so important. When speaking about the historical value of what was formerly the Golden Rock and Industry Estates, what we as St. Martiners commonly know as the Emilia Wilson Estate, was that more to the top of the hill, it is of very high ecological significance. Some foundations of former structures are found on this property. And as such, the Emilia Wilson Estate Foundation, but also Environmental Protection in the Caribbean, Nature Foundation, St. Maarten Pride Foundation are working closely together to raise awareness regarding the cultural and ecological value of these areas on St. Maarten that should really be protected. From a cultural heritage perspective, our ancestors who toiled here, these structures that they have built here, this is an important area to us as a people of St. Maarten that we would like to see protected as our first land-based protected area on St. Maarten. The cultural aspect of it is very significant, and this is where we as a people come from. So that's a little bit about the Emilia Wilson Estate.